Okay, I've started.
I'll get us started here. Welcome everybody to this incredible webinar. And we're going to be talking, and this is more of a masterclass than a traditional webinar. And I'm joined by a fantastic panel. We're going to talk about context being a superpower. And we're going to unpack three people, myself included, playbooks to help you all. But first, let's start with a round of introductions. Rachel, you want to take it away?
Well, sure. I am Rachel Mae. I am the general manager of a sales growth company, partner and licensing certified trainer division, and chief evangelist at a sales growth company. We're the inventors of gap selling. And I am always so excited to spend some time with my friend Jared.
And me as well. Thank you. Quick anecdote before we go to Guru, who is a spectacular revenue leader in his own right. Rachel and I met. I read an awesome book years ago called Gap Selling. And I read it to become a better seller when I was a sales leader. And I lost my job. As will happen along the way, and Rachel became a mentor of mine, and ever since we've been close and growing, and I've been learning so much from her. So when the opportunity came to talk about superpowers and how to sell better and how to bring context to it, she was top of mind. Moving to Guru, though. Guru, let's hear a bit about you and yourself.
Absolutely. But before that, I think I have to say I've been a pleasure to have Rachel as co-panelist, because I've been following her on LinkedIn. I think I remember her profile and say sales girl, bro culture slayer. So and that kind of what registered a long time back. And I was like, okay, I need to see what she's got to say. So thanks for being here, Rachel. My name is Guru, and I've held roles in different departments in the company. So I look at the entire customer experience as a very critical piece to drive revenue and growth. I lead revenue and growth at JustCall right now. And before this, I've worked in companies like ZoomInfo, Cisco, IBM, and other roles. So happy to be here. Happy to talk to all the people about what makes everybody a super rep. So excited.
And yeah, so the combination, we have Guru as the revenue leader, Rachel as chief evangelist, expert seller, trainer. I'm just lucky to have gotten the invite myself. So I'll give a quick intro. The last couple of years, my journey has taken me to RevGenius to empower sellers, marketers, revenue operators, and leaders throughout. Before that, I had an illustrious career. I'm not even sure what that word means. I've had a humbling career is what I've had. 15 plus years selling. Why humbling? Learning how to sell. You're not at the top. Figuring it out and going to the top, but then going to a company that has no clients after it makes you go straight to the bottom, and causes you to have to figure it out. So what's super interesting, and my place here to help is I've been in early stage companies for the last 9 years. Before I was at FedEx, they had their context pretty decent. They had all, the funny thing about selling at FedEx, the amazing thing is that even if they don't do business with you, they have accounts. So you don't even need to find like your ICP, everybody's there, and you just look at who's in your territory based on the revenue that they do. So it was quite a bit easier. But early stage, it got harder and more creative. And even, as you go to mid stages and stuff, when you're going to market with new products or new services or to new people, context is everything. So excited to be here with you all. I'm gonna pass the ball, so to speak, to Guru to start this presentation. Some rules of the road: ask questions, throw them in the comments, and we'll get to those. And I'm sure Rachel and myself and Guru will have questions for one another because we're going to be reviewing each of our playbooks today. So I'm really excited to learn myself. Oh, and JustCall has been an amazing partner for this. So I want to acknowledge them. Spectacular tool.
Let me know when you guys can see my screen. I'm just sharing it. Yep.
Who found that picture of me? That's rare.
Cool. I think, let's get started. I think, there's a lot of power-packed slides and sessions here. All of us are looking forward to learn. So I think I want to start introducing the context of what this is all about. I think the whole central theme for this is about how to make everybody a super rep, right? So we're calling it the super rep series. And initially we want to start talking about a context as a superpower, right? And we'll start, for all those, people who have a lot of questions already, we're going to start walking into deeper layers, and all the playbooks are going to be shared. So let's just dive right in. So I think what's in store is some of the ideas about what do you define context as a superpower? What happens if you operate without context, like from a team level, from a rep level, right? And then from a workflow point of view, how do you add this? How do you make sure that it increases your productivity? And largely, we're kind of calling it a context center, right? Whether you have a sales or a support operation, it's largely like context, right? And how do you measure the impact of this? So that's kind of like the brief agenda of it. I'm going to quickly go into the actual meat of the presentation, right? Context. So I think, it's a very overused word at some level, context, but, people kind of understand, okay, what exactly does it mean, right? I think from how we've set up in my past roles and in JustCall, I think the missing superpower generally in sales and customer support is context. What it means is people are attuned to some kind of a process, and the process kind of works to you can track individual pieces, but the holistic piece is missing, right? And that's kind of I keep asking my teams, right? Do you really have context of the whole conversation, right? Do you really have context of what's happening here? Because you just focus, and we actually have a term for it, it's called sub-optimization, right? So you kind of go deeper into it. So today we can't afford to do it because every company, if you look around, right, every company looks very similar from a website point of view, from a sales rep pitch point of view, product point of view, right? So you need to display more greater empathy, more understanding of the customer's problem, the customer himself or herself, and how do you educate the customer, right? Because that's very important. Now, whether it's a prospect or a support, you need to display that empathy, understand it. So that's kind of why we are putting context as like the missing superpower, which everybody can have, but today it's missing because every rep and team and department starts focusing on a very minute aspect of the whole journey. So that's kind of why I want to take a little bit of a high level view and say, hey, I get it. There's an important reason why you have a process, but let's look at the whole thing. So the question rather is, what are the different parameters you're using to measure the whole CX journey? And are you sure? Are you like 100% sure that your reps have everything that they need to provide a very contextual, personalized experience? So that's kind of like the leading question for the next 35 minutes. And we'll delve into deeper things here. Now, let's start with like what's really happening, right? So this slide was kind of like added after my recent visit to the Customer Contact Week conference, right? So we spoke to a lot of teams, a lot of VPs, a lot of leaders, and it's pretty startling, but with post-COVID and with post how teams are working remote, everybody's agreeing that reps are facing like, high burnout, right? And this is a very common problem. People are like, hey, I can't, for a lot of reasons, maybe high targets, maybe they need more help, maybe they're working remote. There can be a myriad of reasons. But on one side, you have this problem. And on the other side, if you actually start measuring the time, only like maybe little more than 1/3 of the time is actually spent on core tasks, right? If we call this a sales rep, right? And this is a problem because they're being doing like for almost 2/3 of the time, they focused on doing non-core tasks, right? And whether it is a sales rep or like a QA manager or like a sales enablement person, there's a lot of pieces that's missing, right? And this is kind of the core issue that we want to say like, hey, you want to become a super rep, you need to get context, and also you need to only focus on your core tasks. Anything non-core, please remove it so that like, you are productive. So that's kind of like the leading problem statement. And I think I want to kind of like, pass the baton back to a top two leaders, and then I'll come back again at the end to kind of delve into like, what exactly can we do more here. So to lead the context, I think like, I would want to invite Rachel again. The idea here is she'll talk more about how to add context to your workflow, and she'll talk more about from a behavioral point of view. So passing it on, Rachel, the floor is all yours.
Awesome. I think this is a really interesting way to position this because people talk about like the tech that there's so many sales enablement tools now, and everyone talks about the tech, and then everyone talks about like sales behaviors, sales skills, sales behaviors, the sales process. But the failure generally lies in where those two things intersect, and not having context around where those two things should be intersecting. So, I remember the first time when I had never had access to sales enablement tools. I had never had access to a tool where I made a phone call and it was automatically logged, and I could put in the notes, and I could put in a date straight in that says when I'm supposed to call back again, and have it added to my tasks. And I never had a tool where I can put in my notes as I'm on a meeting, and it's gonna, shift my notes around straight and attach them to that account. And so I don't have to spend time, 15, 20, 30 minutes after each call putting the notes into the CRM. So, like a lot of salespeople, I have operated throughout most of my career without those types of tools. And when I actually had those tools, it was wonderful. However, it's not going to make me sell more, right? So we can give them back by using technology, this 20% of time that they're spending searching for contacts. We can give them back this 15% of time they're logging stuff in the CRM, right? Like all of these things, we can give them back that time. But the question then becomes like, what should they be spending that time on? And the question also is, okay, fine, we're getting calls logged in the CRM, we're getting notes in the CRM, but what is the substance of those calls, of those discovery meetings? What is the substance of that information? So adding these technology tools will not work without a comprehensive strategy for change management of sales behaviors within the sales process. In other words, when I'm on a call, maybe I'm on a prospecting call, what information am I collecting during that call that's going to help me to get into that account? That's going to help me get a meeting, that's going to help me move the needle a little farther than I was before? Or what information am I getting on that call that is going to help me to ensure that this is a qualified opportunity before I pass it off to the AE? And if I asked a lot of those questions, what I would get from most sales leaders and most salespeople is, well, these qualifying questions, right? The kind of pure, this is how many locations they have. This is what they use today, right? This is their budget. This is their timing. This is who the contact is. And none of that is going to propel the sale forward. So understanding that until you have a shared view of the customer through the whole like CX process, then your salespeople are not going to be necessarily collecting the right information to go into the system. You know, they're not going to be putting all those pieces of context together. So when I think of like, what sales behaviors do I need to have in order to make this type of tech effective? I'm looking at what information are they collecting throughout the sales process that helps us to better understand the context of what's happening in the prospect's current state, where they need to go within their future state, and what that gap is in between. I'm looking for like, what are the business problems happening? What is the impact of those problems? What is at the root cause of those problems? What does success look like afterwards? If they don't change, what bad thing is going to happen? You know, all of those different things. Are we making sure that we are getting, you know, the contact information for everyone that will be involved within that buying process? And is that information going into the CRM? Are we putting notes related to each contact we speak to, or only the main one? And we're completely forgetting the other people that were on that call and what questions they asked and what was most important to them. So it all starts to me with, you can't have context without being like, I should be able to look in the CRM and I should know why this prospect should buy, why they should buy now, why they should buy from you, and what's going to happen if they don't. So I guess what I'm saying essentially is having more tech to get more information and data into the system is not helpful if the data collected doesn't actually move the deal forward. So don't buy the tech tools and not work on refining your sales process and changing sales behavior to one that is problem and customer centric, to ensure that the information you have actually does provide real context. The second piece says, okay, now I have all this information. One of the reasons why it's so hard to get reps to collect all the information they need and actually log it and put it into the system is because they don't see the value in putting all that information into the system. They don't see the value to them. How is it going to make me more money? Knowing how many calls I've made and having something that logs all of my calls, is that just a babysitting tool to make sure I made all my calls? Because that's what most reps think it is, but it's not, right? When used effectively, it is a sales tool to help you as a salesperson close more deals, right? But how we use the information matters. So for example, all of the information that I collect in discovery, I know I have to put it in the CRM because it's very clear to me that I have to have all this context around their current state, physical, literal, business, problems, root cause, impact, right? Emotional, what's the next yes? When I think about that, I'm not going to remember all of that information. There's no way. It's literally, I have like 4 or 5 pages of notes by the time I'm done with the discovery call. I am not going to remember that. Why is that important? Well, it's important because that discovery information is used in the way that I follow up. I take all that information I collected, and if someone goes dark on me, they're going to get a message from me that's like, yo, Like, you said this, you said this, you said if you didn't make this change, this bad thing was going to happen. And now I haven't heard from you for 3 months. Like, I'm really concerned that we're getting behind the puck here, right? And so every single communication and follow-up and the way I shape my demo is going to be based on their problems, their root causes, their impacts. If that information is not in the CRM, my sale is dead, right? So I, as a salesperson, live and breathe within my CRM. It is everything to me. But if people feel like they're just feeding the machine and it's not actually having an impact on their sales results, then you're not going to get that same level of like participation. So that brings me to the next piece. Leadership is who brings that all together. So you have to create a common language around the information, the context that you all use throughout the organization, and especially from the leadership level down. And what that looks like is, you know, if I'm a sales leader, I'm not having a pipeline meeting or a conversation about activity that is not driven by data, context, and information that lives within the CRM. Because if I am doing that, then I'm having a conversation that's based on assumptions, which means that, number one, the person that I'm talking to does not think that what I'm saying is relevant to them at all. And it's actually quite insulting to base any type of coaching or action plan or anything else on assumptions and not on observable moments and observable data. So it destroys trust and credibility at the leadership level. So, and forget what it does to obviously your ability to make data-driven decisions. But from a leadership perspective, if I'm in a pipeline meeting, I'm opening up the CRM, I'm opening up the notes. And I'm like, okay, let's have a conversation about this account. And I'm going to go straight to their notes. And they know that I am anticipating that I will be able to tell why that client should buy, what business problems they have, what the impacts, what the root causes are, what's going to happen if they don't buy, make a change, right? And they are anticipating that I'm going to ask all of those questions. And if I can identify why that person needs to buy, what business problem they're solving, how we're solving for the root cause, then that thing's getting out of the pipeline. Doesn't belong there. Because if you don't know why they need to buy, then I can guarantee you they don't know why they need to buy, right? So it's about inspecting what you expect as a leader, like leveraging that data, but not to micromanage. Instead, to create a common view of the customer and a common language that we all use across the entire organization, right? So going back to context, if I'm a leader in customer success and I am seeing that I'm going to onboarding and I don't know why this person bought, I don't know what the problems were, I don't know what the root cause of those problems are, then I've got to be going back to sales and saying, I need this information before I onboard this client. Because otherwise, you're not going to get the level of adoption that you're looking for, and you're not going to be able to validate that purchasing decision 6 months, 1 year down the line when that account, God forbid, wants to churn, or you want to help upgrade what they currently have. So I guess that's my big message today, is that it's not about more information. It's about the right information and leveraging it in a way that drives the sales process forward, that is customer, buyer, problem centric, and that enables leadership to coach and develop people back to that common customer, buyer centric language. Was that helpful?
Yeah, tough act to follow, Rachel, but I'll try.
You did it. You did it to yourself, bro.
It wasn't my call to go right after you. It was my call to have you here. It was not my call for the order, but you brought up an awesome point that I don't have in my next slides, but we could move on in the process to my slides, but I'll speak to it at the beginning. So, the high level is, how do we create a super rep? And some of the facts that were shared by Guru in the beginning were like 36% of the time is spent selling. We used to call that corrupted selling, right? Because like all that other time is corrupted. And Rachel brought up a good point, going through the whole journey and the handoff, and she brought up many good points. But the one that I'd add to here is, churn isn't on CS or the product. It's on sales, selling the right deals in. Okay. Being incentivized for the right deals, leaders, et cetera, like, and all of that. CS isn't on product. And, but where I went with this,
unless it is.
It can be. and frankly, it depends what stage you're on. I did once sell a product that didn't work and nobody made it to month 2, but that's that's something else. So it can be for sure, Rachel, but like oftentimes, especially on a mature product, we could talk about a mature product that it could very well be on sales, but how could we get to the point where we're qualifying people the right way? How could we get to the point where we're being effective on time and selling most of the time? And I'm going to just read, I'm going to keep the name out of this, one LinkedIn message I got from this morning. That's a great segue into this. Hi, Jared. I'm working with professionals in your industry to help them promote corporate culture and build community through cost-effective remote personal training classes. I think we could both benefit from learning more about each other's companies and initiatives. Can't wait to connect. Rachel, you're giving me a look. This was the best note I got today. Like, it's this and below, right? And where I'm going with this is, my playbook is understand the problem your product and services solves. I'm not going to get on the phone with them. I guarantee that person sending that same message to so many people. Imagine if they get that person on the phone with somebody that Rachel's training, like you're not getting this whole experience to try to get a high percentage of selling starts with the ICP. Who are you going after? So understand the problem your product or service solves. This sounds so intuitive, everybody. It's not always so intuitive. Like, especially for folks that just start with the company. Like, why is this important to your prospects? Why is sales training important to your prospects? What are they doing now without you? Everybody's unfortunately, after ramp, there's a fall off. How much does your product or service benefit the folks that are using you right now? This is also understanding who's already using you. And there's probably a couple extra bullets that I missed, but understanding the problem and your product and like what it actually solves is key. Because then from there, you could start building a picture of who's this the most important for. Your ideal customer profile, ICP, who could afford your solution. Rachel's not going after early stage companies, even though they definitely need her. Who has the biggest pain right now? They're going to say they have the biggest pain, but financially, probably not. And who will get the most value out of it right now? Like the quickest. Yes, everybody could use your product. So I hear that so many times. Not everybody could say that. Like if you have a Salesforce product, only Salesforce users could theoretically or should use it. But it's not every Salesforce user. If you sell a product that integrates on Shopify, it's not every Shopify store, right? Like what is that? persona look like? The number of employees, the revenue, perhaps, the geography, etc., the roles. So now you're understanding the problem. I help Shopify stores in North America that have an average order value of this many people here, and I could gauge the conversion here, convert more people. This is important because if they don't do this, they're going to have to lay people off because they're not going to be profitable right now in this economy. And they'll get the most value because they're the right size, they can afford to buy and all of that, for instance, right? So this is the most important for them. And yes, it's going to be important for a few different tiers of people, but rank them, like who's most important to now. And again, we're going to create the super rep. We're going to get that 36% up to 86%. You can't get away from the CRM and some of that stuff, no matter how hard you want to try. But that's important. Now going to the next slide. Understand what's going on in the market, the economy, competition of buyers. I think this is massive for whatever you're selling. Just like understanding what they might be doing, understanding the economy, like today, what's going on. So many people say it like, yeah, you have to run a profitable business. All this. This is another trigger for why it's important to folks and the certain people. And then understand who in your ICP is in the market right now, is who's hiring, who's engaging. And this is, so we started with like a high level ICP, and all of this can be done without tools, and all of this could be given extra power with tools, right? So like you could go on LinkedIn today and type in sales and have 60 million salespeople come, right? You don't even need to have the sales navigator program for that. You need internet, I'll give you that, and most of the stuff you do, but you don't need much more than that. And then you could type in the roles, you could type in the industries and all of that, and you could start getting like a certain idea. You could find out who's hiring on LinkedIn, on Google. Now, who's engaging? So right now we're going a little more towards, we started just the ICP, and now we're going down the funnel to figuring out how best your time could be optimized right now. Maybe it's who's hiring. Maybe somebody just going for a sales growth, the hashtag the best sales training company out there. Maybe one of their triggers is like, hey, a lead of sales role has been on the market or out there for 45 plus days. I should see like what's going on with their reps right now. Or maybe it's the other way, where somebody just got hired that they worked with in the past company. There's both indicators there. Who's engaging on social and on your website? Who's liking the content that you're putting out or that your company is? That is in that ICP, especially. What specific events are going on right now that are happening? Funding, chat on website. But again, this is in your ICP, and this is all to give you triggers. And again, there's tools and products that could help accentuate all of this. But you don't need them. If you have the internet, you could figure out all of this as well. And then who's attending your events and signing up for your content. These are all people that are super interested. So when you make your messaging and outreach relevant to all of that, and it's not just outreach, it's messaging on your site, messaging in your discovery calls, etc., things will move faster. Case in point. How did we grow RevGenius so fast? I was not overcoming any objections from folks that I reached out to. It was just about reaching out to the right people based on certain attributes and doing it fast. And yeah, this, when you find somebody that has a problem, that can buy it from you, that can hit value fast. Then when you layer in your discovery questions and find the gap, guess what? They're going to have one. So you're going to waste time on a lot less people at the top of the funnel. And yeah, you're not going to be, they're not going to have as many objections as the person not ready to buy. I promise you that. And their objections are genuinely going to be because they either don't understand the product or it's not a fit, and you drive them towards either. But make your messaging and outreach relevant. Hope that was interesting for everybody. I want to make it as simple for y'all. You just say hi, like, oh, I need you. I was looking for JustCall. Great. How'd you read my mind?
I think, those are, I think, like, both of you brought very different points to this conversation of context, right? I think I really liked how Rachel put forth, like, she kind of underscores the problem today, which is like basically every sales and marketing person, right? Like, has like tons of tools. They have like, 50 tools, and they need a tool to tell them which tool to use. Right, literally, like, it's kind of become that kind of a problem, right? So too much is not the answer. Be it tools, be it information, like, and I like the framework also. So I think that is a very important piece from a sales point of view. And what you bring in, Jad, what you brought the points was more about, like, just understanding context, right? Like customer empathy, right? Even in a sales call, display that. Don't just come and, like, pitch your thing and then leave, right? Don't expect that, and this whole brute force sales is not working anymore, right? We've gone from, earlier when I was in sales, it was more about like one email you try and you get. Today we're talking about a 21 sequence email, like 21 email sequences, right? Or I don't know what's the latest number on it, like, stretching for 2 months or what. So I think the idea is, less is more. Use context there in information, in tools, and at the same time, like what the point you were raising about is display that customer empathy, spend that time, right? You don't have to reach 100 prospects when you can actually do some work, reach 30. That note to you could have been a lot better, Jared. So I think I like how, you're presenting different viewpoints from the context, and I think I like to add 3, but before that, I want to see if Rachel has any questions for Jared.
Oh, don't stump me. This isn't a test that you know the answer, I hope.
I'm like, what did you do this weekend? No, I don't have any questions. No, I mean, I think one thing that I would lock in on there is, most salespeople, sales organizations, sales leaders, almost all of them that we talk to, if you ask them if they're focused on problems and understanding the problems and working with people who are having those problems, they will tell you yes. But what they really mean is that they are working with and uncovering technical process problems, right? So that I think when Jared's talking about the problem, he's not talking about that, right? Like you don't solve for I don't know how many calls my reps are making and there's no follow-up because all the calls aren't being logged. That's not what you solve for, right? You solve for my SDRs, BDRs, my sales reps aren't hitting their number, and because of that, we missed our revenue target by 20% last quarter. That's what you solve for. So yep. I think understanding, what Jared is saying is it's really about focusing in on, who has the business problems that you solve, and then finding out if the root cause of those business problems is that broken tool or process that your solution solves for, right?
And it's easy to do with like a lot of levels of context. Like I know if I'm selling to an SDR manager, their OKRs are like what percentage of the reps are hitting what percentage of quota every quarter. And if I'm seeing like, I'm assuming 3 months is the minimum ramp time. Rachel knows like that's wishful thinking sometimes, but let's
That's
assume 3
fairy
months.
tale.
And you know that there's between 8 and 12 people on a team, and this manager is hiring for 4 people. You could reach out and say, how the F are you hitting your number in the next 3 months? Like it's just, and you could, for instance, right? Like you could guess that, and they'll probably laugh because they'll be like, I have a 6-month leeway because they realized it was a hard one or something like that. And now all of a sudden you're on the same page.
I think too, like when we're talking about context, I mean, an excellent point here is if I speak to any, like if they don't have the right tools in place, especially, and I talk to any like business development leader or just sales manager, sales leader, and I ask them like, why is your team not hitting plan? More often than not, they're going to say that they don't have enough meetings. And when I ask them why they don't have enough meetings, more often than not, they're going to tell me that it's because the reps won't pick up the phone and they're not making calls. And they always think that it's an activity problem. They never think it's a skill problem. And so, you know, when they don't have the right data, they make very poor assumptions about what the root cause is of the problem. And so then they start going all in. Okay, well, if I think that the root cause is activity, we just need more calls, then I'm going to act in a very different way as a leader than if I know that actually, if we could just convert 20% more of the calls we're already making, then we'd be hitting the number. And so I can really use the data to diagnose, to have real context that I can use to diagnose whether I have a skill or a will problem. Because it's really easy to just say your sales reps are lazy, but lazy people are not attracted to sales careers. They're attracted to careers where you get paid the same, whether you try hard or not, right? Like you don't go into sales if you're lazy, but somehow they always think it's activity, it's activity. They're just not doing enough. And so without the right information, you know, they're making really bad decisions out of context. Look at how people are hiring right now or laying people off right now, right? It's like all of a sudden the economy takes a little dip and we got to like lay off half of our salespeople. Well, I'm going to venture to guess that somewhere along the line, someone didn't have the right context to understand if they should have hired those people in the first place, right? So like when things are good and money's booming and you're like, to grow, you know, we need to hire like 20 more people. Well, do you, or do you just need the 20 people that you have to improve their win rate from 20% to 35%, right? I mean, it's going to cost you far less money to help the people you have sell more than it is for you to hire a bunch of new bodies that you then have to go and lay off and have the PR nightmare and all that shit later on. So it's just like the information is there. Sometimes it's there within the system. But like you said, Guru, they're looking at it in a vacuum and not like holistically as an organization to make really great decisions. Or they're like listening, right? Like I hear this too. They'll ask the salespeople why they're not selling, and the salespeople will be like, it's the competition, the price is too high, I need more stuff from marketing, like, right, all this crap. And then they just start throwing, I need this tech tool, right? And they just start throwing a bunch of stuff at it without really using all of the data, putting it all into context to do a real diagnosis that's not based on, you know, someone's opinion or assumptions or, you know, internal biases that we might already have. So, you know, it's not just about having the right tech. It's not just about having the right data. It is about being able to put all of that into context to make really great choices for our organization and for our people. And then for the salespeople to make really great decisions about how they're going to move that sale forward.
Yeah, and the
I
good
think
news
that's an
for
excellent. Sorry,
I
Jared.
was just going to
I
say
think that's an. Go ahead. Finish your point.
I was just going to say the good news for Rachel is she has a really good lead list now. Hashtag video conferencing platform. That will remain nameless.
No, I think what Rachel has put forth is a great point. I think that is kind of like the heart of the problem you're trying to address, and that's also a good segue into the next the final section of like the context. And I kind of want to touch on I mean, Rachel has made my job a little easier because I think every sales VP, right, I talk to, I kind of like tell them two things. Tell them if the next two problems I'm going to tell are not your problems, then you can just hang up and go, right? And then it works for sales, it works for support, it works for success, right? These problems are very simple. I tell them your number one problem is you're not able to train your reps fast enough or good enough, right? They're nodding as I complete this point. Second is you don't want your top 1, 3, 5% of reps to perform well. You need all of them to perform well, right? Consistent peak performance. I think these are problem areas that don't get the attention. They don't solve it. Like, I think I like the way how Rachel put it. Like, you need to grow, but do you need to hire 20 reps or you want your existing reps to perform as the top rep? Right? That's a very important statement, right? So I think that's kind of where our messaging is my experience has been is like, hey, how do we make super reps out of your existing reps, right? Let's talk about that, right? And whether you're hiring them, whether you already have them in place, it doesn't matter, but can we get every rep into a super rep? So that's kind of like our playbook. And I think since we've already touched upon information and empathy and understanding, I want to touch upon the other piece. The other piece is like you need to get a very minimal basic tech stack because you cannot operate without it. So you need to get a super rep stack. Right? And this super rep stack can be very simple. Like you just need to for a sales team, you need to have a CRM, some kind of solution to call, engage with emails or whatever. And then you need some kind of intelligence layer because that addresses your first two problems. One is of training, one is of consistent peak performance. And last, but the most important is it needs to be integrated into your entire org. It's kind of like the neural network, right? Your tech stack. It needs to get information everywhere because your every rep needs to be armed with all the information which kind of gets into context, right? So Rachel, I've actually mentioned it here, works for your laziest rep. It's funny because what I mean by that is actually I think I mean efficiency, right? Like when somebody asked Bill Gates, who do you want to hire? He said, I want to hire the most laziest person because he'll find the most efficient way to do a task, right? So in that context, what I want to say is you can do the least amount of work to get the best results. So that's the kind of enablement. So we don't want to leave it to chance to let the rep decide whether I want to work or not. We want to have like a stack which guarantees consistent peak performance, right? That's the kind of logic. So how are you going to make that happen? And that's kind of like where you need to make a very, very conscious choice about what the tech stack looks like. It's just like as good as a problem like you have when you hire reps, right? You need to know, you need to hire good people and then enable them with this kind of a super stack. Now, what will this tech stack do, right? The first thing is for training, you need to have an always on engine. You can't just train them for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and or like what Jared said, 3 months ramp type. I think what you need right now is constant nudges, feedback, always on engine, because most of the team is remote, they're working differently. So you need to keep it live so that like people keep getting nuggets and lessons and learning, right? That's a very important piece to kind of learn. And second, you need to start mimicking good behavior, right? Take it from the best reps, start applying it, start feeding it. Maybe it's about how they handle a customer objection, maybe how they pitched, how the tone, how much time they spoke, whatever it is. All that needs to immediately move towards entire team. And that's how you get the entire team, not just the top 1 or 3 or 5% to perform well. And that's very key. And this whole feedback loop concept is because today we live in a world where more than learning, unlearning and relearning is important. So I think like that's the logic behind why these two problems are still so important, right? One is I'm not able to train my reps fast. And second is I'm not able to get all of my reps to perform at the same level. So I think this is the foundation of the SuperReps tech stack as we see it. And how do you get started on this, right? I mean, like, I know this might sound like, a little bit crazy for a lot of people. Like, how do you get started? It's very simple, right? You just go through every tool your sales team uses, whether it's a notepad, Excel sheet, whatever, just make a note of everything. Start thinking about, okay, if I have a CRM or if you already have it, great. Look at remove all the non-core process tech, not necessary at all, right? Everything should start flowing into your CRM. People should not leave. The more number of tabs, more number of tools the rep has to go, the less work they get done, which is the second slide I showed you, right? Non-core task, remove everything. You need to bring context quickly, and then you need to have that always on engine, which kind of enforces good behavior, coaching, learning, and kind of like, make sure that you keep nudging the best performance up by maybe 1% every year. Like that's kind of like how you should think about it. So that's kind of like our playbook, very simple. And I think that kind of goes well with the other idea of information and customer empathy. So the idea here is to think about building your contact center, right? How do you use your CRM, use any of the softwares to kind of have one place where everybody in the sales team or the support team gets all the context, right? So, and you kind of have all the information you need. You don't have to go to any other tool, which kind of puts the focus back on the core task. And this actually has both problems. You are enabling super reps, and at the same time, you're reducing burnout, which is the key problem today. Um, Again, this is another slide to talk about more about why you need to know all of your calls, what's happening during the call, post call, so that you can actually build an engine that is always on, which listens and mimics the good behavior. That's the key piece, because the sales team needs the context. And now this is a line we take very seriously, which is no rep left behind. Right. So it's basically like, even if your top 80% reps are performing great, that's not an excuse. You need to have all your top 100% reps performing well. Right. And that is how you make sure like you get everybody into that super rep zone. So that's pretty much it, I think, for our session today. And I think we can open for questions in terms of, workflows or super rep stack or information. I'll pass the baton back to Bray to handle questions.
Thank you.
I'm just using the QR code here. This is awesome.
Make it easy.
Yeah, and I think this is massive. The idea of nobody wants to not be a super rep. You become a sales rep because you want to make money. Maybe you want to help people. You want to talk to people. You want to be part of the lifeline of the business. But depending on where you pull the stats, that's not a majority of folks today. People want to become super reps. So this is so awesome that we're doing this series together. And this was the first part. All right, we got a question. Lyle wants to see JustCall.
Yep.
Show us a little. JustCall does so much. Lyle, let's high level it and let's see. Okay, cool. Just send Guru an email. Rachel, what questions do you have? Rachel has the best questions.
I have no questions. I guess my question would be for the audience. to maybe do some self-reflection and think about, based on the conversation today, where might your own gaps be as it relates to assessing who's a super rep, who's not a super rep, where each person is on the skills like level that they need to have for all their core competencies. How are you using data and context to understand where their skill development opportunities are? And, are you coaching to observable moments based on that context, or are you coaching based on assumptions? And how are you kind of measuring the health of the information collected during the sales cycle and your process for leveraging that information? I think that's a good kind of assessment that everyone needs to make before they add any new tools.
I gave the links to follow everybody for more content, because this was just one webinar. We're going to do a few more with JustCall to just get into the minds of being a super rep. But this panel here lives this every single day. So like in the content that they produce. So definitely follow everybody, myself included, here.
And thank you guys so much for having me. It was a really very fun discussion.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Jared. I think it's been a great talk. And I think there's a lot of very interesting points put forth in this context. So I'm really looking forward to engaging more with both of you actually.
Awesome. All right, I have to go teach some salespeople how to kick more ass now.
Take care, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Guru.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.